Well, welcome back, everyone. Season's greetings. Good to be with you again. My fall semester, the work is done, so I get to goof off with you again here on YouTube. And you taggees, be thankful I tagged you and brought you here. The reason I did is because I'm blocked at the channels that you like to comment on, so they don't let me speak there. I'm bringing you here. By the way, how do you like my new handle? Charlie Bad Grandpa Michaels. Yes, Bad Grandpa now. Some of my critics, some of my younger critics, Gen Z critics, they believe they can get at me by calling me Grandpa. And some have even called me Bad Grandpa, which, there's a couple reasons for that. And I'll show you exactly why they are calling me Bad Grandpa. Stand by here. Well, the main reason they're calling me Bad Grandpa is because back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I slept with all of their grandmothers. So yeah, that's as good a reason as any, I guess. This was back in the day. I believe that's from 1986. Any case, there's another reason that they're calling me Bad Grandpa, which is I don't subscribe to their gospel according to personal sacrifice free, easy believism. And that's what the subject of this video, the latest in the series on false teaching, Onorato Diamante, who I've found out has turned into a really good teaching tool because he brings with him an audience. So yes, not only is this fellow steeped in grievous error, which can be corrected and used to help people, but he brings an audience with him, some of whom I have tagged here. So welcome, folks. We're going to talk tonight about John 6:29, which is one of Ono's favorite verses, which he does not understand and does not want to understand. But I should say, in fairness, there's a reason Ono does not understand John 6:29, nor do a lot of people actually, because it was like so many verses in the New Testament mistranslated by easy believers, by monergists, people who believe that God must do all the work of salvation, that all you can do is be a passive recipient of belief. So we're going to go and have a look at one of Ono's latest false teachings in a video he did some 3 or 4 days ago, I believe. This is the December 16th that I'm recording. I believe he released this on the 12th, something around there. But once again, he goes to his favorite go-to verse, John 6:29. So we're going to let him talk about that, interrupt him, and then I'm going to show him why he's wrong. Now, he won't care, and a lot of you people I tagged won't care. But come Judgment Day, you will be entirely without excuse. Stand by. So this one, Ono entitled, "This Argument Against Faith Alone Almost Fooled Me." So he borrowed something from Sam Shamounian, another false teacher I don't have a lot of use for. And he goes again to John 6:27-29. This is one of his favorite passages. He doesn't understand it. You're going to see why in a moment. But this is probably, I would say, in the top 3 of his favorite proof texts for preaching the false but ear-scratching gospel according to personal sacrifice-free, easy believism, which is something that's very popular out here in the YouTube sphere. You have a lot of false teaching libertines who are trying to tell you that all you have to do is believe in the old story and the pearly gates will open wide for you on Judgment Day. It doesn't matter what you've done down here. All right, so let's hear him run with it. Let's hear Ono once again teach us about John 6:29.
A verse commonly cited by those who oppose salvation through faith alone is John chapter 6, verse 29, wherein they argue that faith itself is a work. Jesus said this is the work of God, don't miss that ye believe on him whom he hath sent. Now, on surface level, it seems pretty clear cut if we completely disregard the context. But that's not what we do here. Look at verse 28 of the very same chapter. Then said they unto him, what shall we do that we might work the works of God? Notice first and foremost how man assumes a plurality of works are necessary. What shall we do that we might work the works, plural, of God? The question presupposes that multiple works are necessary to merit God's favor. In verse 29, Christ echoes their vocabulary using the word work, ironically, to expose their prideful preconception. Meaning, don't miss this, Christ mirrors their terminology to undermine their theology. I'll say that again. Christ mirrors their terminology to undermine their theology.
Wow. Jesus is going to mirror their terminology to undermine their soteriology, their theory of salvation. That was really clever of the Lord. He's going to use their own words against them. Well, let's hear them. Wow.
In other words, the only work you must do is not a work at all. It's the non-meritorious reception of God's free gift. Romans chapter 4, verse 5 says, but to him that worketh not, notice this contrast, but believeth on him that justifieth the ungodly, to
him that worketh not, but believeth on him. Worketh not. Well, how is that term works used directly above in Romans? The works of the Torah. It's also used that same way throughout Romans 4 and in Romans 3. It's talking, Paul the ex-Pharisee, of course, is talking about works of the Torah, ritual sacrifices, keeping the Passover. It's not talking about taking little old ladies across the street. But that's why this false teacher, Ono, would like to interpret worketh. Also, believeth on him. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. This verb that you see in yellow here, that gets translated believeth. No, it's not believeth on him. It's committeth to him. Okay, there's nothing for Abraham to believe. And there's no good reason why he should be credited for his belief anyway. Credulity is not a virtue. This is a mistranslation. Again, Ono is not entirely to blame for this. He's reading mistranslations made by monergists some 400 years ago and kept by Protestant ideologues ever since. But there's nothing to believe on here. And it's not a virtue anyway. No. Believeth means committeth, and I can show you that. In fact, I better show it to you right now, so you'll believe me. Stand by. I know a lot of you people, your eyes glaze over when someone begins talking about the original Greek language upon which our New Testaments are based. I get that. It's kind of tiresome a little bit when we get into the weeds there with the actual words with which our New Testaments were translated. But there is one particular verb. If you want to understand anything about the New Testament, about Christianity, you have to understand what this one verb, pisteuo, can mean. Like so many Koine verbs, this has more than one meaning. It is context dependent. Okay? It doesn't mean the same thing, just like a lot of English verbs don't mean the same thing all the time. Take the verb run. Run can mean 3 or 4 different things. Run for office, run the wash machine, run down the street. Run can mean different things, and so can this verb that gets translated believe. It can also mean commit. It depends upon the context, okay? The context decides whether you're talking about credence or whether you're talking about commitment. All right, and the very same gospel that we're talking about John, where he's citing in John, this is the work. Jesus says, this is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he has sent. That's John 6:29, okay? That same verb in John 2:24, as I have up here, it says, Jesus did not commit himself unto them. It's the same verb. Instead of believe, it's commit in John 6 and John 2:24. And it's not the only place. There's 7 or 8 places that they translated this verb commit or entrust. Basically, it means give authority to. All right. And there's a number of other places in the New Testament, besides the ones that they reluctantly changed the meaning of this verb. There's a number of other places in the New Testament, arguably, that should have been translated something other than believe. A case that comes to mind, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 7, where it says, love believeth all things. No, love does not believeth all things. Love does not believe gossip. Love does faithfully all things. So this verb, again, you have to understand this when you're reading your New Testament. This verb that gets translated believe doesn't necessarily mean believe. Whenever you see that verb believe, you have to ask yourself, believe what? Believe what? What is the context? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him. Believeth what? No, not believeth. Whosoever commits to him will have everlasting life. Not believeth, committeth. Okay? So, and at your own leisure, go through this little section here that I've given you, where this verb was reluctantly translated something other than believe. Okay? That's just a sampling here. This verb that gets translated believe in our New Testaments, it's context dependent. Like so many Koine words, it is context dependent. The same thing with the nouns that get translated faith. We've been trained to think it's always talking about a belief system. No. Faith also, just as in English, means fidelity, sincerity, loyalty, commitment. That's what faith means. That's also what this verb that gets translated believe means. Again, we were talking about people who were rebelling from the Roman Catholic Church in the 1600s, 1500s. They much preferred believe than commit, because some of these people didn't want to commit any longer to the Roman Catholic Church, which I fully understand. However, they did play fast and loose. Well, let's go back to what Ono was talking about. There's some other problems with his exegesis, actually his eisegesis. Let's go back to it. So like John 6:29, Romans 4:5 and Romans 4:2 are among Ono's favorite voices. But again, he completely misunderstands all of it. To him that worketh not. Well, worketh is not meaning doing anything and everything you could possibly do to please God. No, worketh in this context is talking about deeds prescribed by the law of Moses, the Torah, of which Paul, the ex-Pharisee, of course, was an expert on. That's what he is talking about in Romans chapter 4, verse 5. Abraham did not have the law of Moses. That's why he brought Abraham in, because he didn't work the same way that the Jews of Paul's time were working to get righteous with God. But believeth on him. No, not believeth on, committeth to. Just like Abraham committed to God's authority. He left his home in Ur and went where God told him to go. What does it say? But believeth on him that justifieth the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Ono has faith in yellow. He wants to highlight your attention to it. But he's pretending this noun that got translated faith is talking about trust. But it's a noun. It's not an action verb that means trust. Faith can mean a certain content of beliefs. But if that content of belief is not specified, this noun is talking about fidelity. It's talking about obedience. Justifieth the ungodly, his faith, his sincerity, his loyalty, his obedience is counted for righteousness. And that's what Romans 4:5 is talking about. I did an hour-long video on Romans chapter 4. I called it arguably the most misunderstood chapter in the entire New Testament, because it's not talking about trust. It's talking about the fidelity of Abraham to God. And Paul in Romans chapter 4 is contrasting fidelity to God with fidelity to the Torah. This unlettered, unteachable, pious fraud, Ono, Diamante, does not know this, does not want to know this. And neither do most of you that I've tagged. Okay? But once again, you are without excuse now. The truth has been delivered to you. Whether you choose to accept it or not, that's on you from now on. Let's let Ono continue. Go ahead, Ono.
His faith is counted for righteousness. If faith is a work, then this verse should read, but to him that worketh not, but worketh, his work is counted for righteousness. That would be absurd. The contrast drawn by Paul clearly distinguishes between working and believing. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. You are familiar with this passage. For by grace are ye saved through.
This again is another famous proof text of the easy believers, which does not mean anything that they think it's talking about. For by grace are ye saved. Well, saved from what? Saved from what? In the context of Ephesians chapter 2, it's not talking about hell. It's talking about you're saved from your estrangement from God. Not from hell. You don't get to eisegete from hell here. Every time you see this verb that gets translated saved, which like, again, just like believe, this verb could be translated half a dozen different ways and has been in the New Testament. You don't get to eisegete from hell after saved. Through faith. Again, through faith, Paul is not talking about the warm and fuzzy mental activity of the Ephesians here. Paul is talking about the fidelity of the Son of God to God the Father. I'll say that again. Paul is not talking about anybody's warm and fuzzy mental activity in Ephesians 2:8. He is talking about the fidelity of Jesus to God the Father. That's what saved them, the Ephesians, from being estranged to God. And that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Yeah. It's not what you Ephesians did. It's what God did by giving his son. Again, I've done another hour-long video on this verse too. Check my playlist if you want to see more.
Faith. And that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Notice this, not of works, lest any man should boast. Charlie Bing comments, Jesus answers simply.
Okay, we'll put him down here. Not of works, as he says. Again, he's pretending that works is anything and everything you might possibly do to please God. No. Paul distinguishes between works of the Torah and virtuous works in the very next verse, where he adds the adjective that gets translated good. In Ephesians 2:10, they talk about you are created for good works. But good works are different than the works he's talking about in 2:9 or in Romans 4:5. Something else here that Ono mistakes. He's pretending that because in Ephesians 6:29, the singular form of the noun work, ergon, is used. He's pretending that that must mean you're talking about doing a single thing. Well, that, of course, is ridiculous. You can talk about lots of things you do with the singular noun work. You came home from work tonight. Did you do a single thing at work the whole time? But no, you say, I came back from work. But you're using the singular noun work. Does that mean you only did one thing? Of course not. Let's have a look at how the same noun is used later in John. Let me show you this. Okay, so Ono likes to pretend that we see at the bottom here, John 6:29, and Jesus answered and said unto them, this is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he has sent. He likes to pretend that this has to be talking about a single act, because the work is in the singular form. It's not works, it's work. So Jesus has to be talking about a single thing, a single act in John 6:29. Let's have another look, though. Have a look at John 17, verse 4 at the bottom here. This is Jesus speaking at the Last Supper. He's praying, and he says, I glorified you, the Father, on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. Once again, I glorified you on earth by finishing the work, singular, that you gave me to do. Is Jesus talking about he came to earth to do a single thing? Is that what he means by work here? I came here to do one thing. I didn't come here to do works. I only did one thing here on earth. Is that what work really means? Well, obviously that's not what it means in John 17:4. Why then do you think it has to mean a single thing in John 6:29? Look at it above. Jesus answered them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. Work. The same thing. Why are you insisting, oh no, that in John 6:29, Jesus is talking about a single thing? Because of the verb, believe? Let's have a look at something else. Stand by. I showed you earlier in the Word document that this verb that gets translated believe can also mean commit. But some of you are going to say, well, how do you commit on someone? No, it must mean believe, because look at the word that comes after believe. It's on. I can't commit on him. I can believe on him. Well, guess what? Turns out on is another spin translation. Look at John 6:15 above. When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. To the mountain. You see the preposition I have in green here, that is the transliteration of the Koine preposition, EIS, epsilon, iota, sigma. Translated EIS, ice, it's G1519. It gets translated to some 280 times in the New Testament, all over the New Testament. There's several other places in John. This same word, this same preposition that they translated on in 629, it gets translated to all over John. So you cannot wax dogmatic about believing on. No, this is the work of God, that you commit to him whom he hath sent. I'll say that again. This is the work of God, that you commit to him whom he has sent. Now, why is that a better translation? Because there's nothing to believe on in John 6:29. What are you going to believe on? That he's a magician? He just fed the 5,000 with a couple of fishes and loaves. Fine. He hasn't gone to the cross yet. There's nothing to believe on. Oh no. There is someone, however, to commit to. And that's why your greasy grace gospel is a lie from hell. All right. I got to take a lesson from well-meaning people who say your videos are too long, and they're right. My videos are too long. So I'm going to stop here. But the point has been made. One, yes, I was with all your grandmothers back then. Okay? I admit it. So call me bad grandpa. Number two, John 6:29 does not mean what this greasy grace fool thinks it means. It's talking about commitment to the Messiah. It's not talking about believing on something. Credulity is not a virtue. I'll say something else here before I go. How do you command someone to believe something? How? You either believe it or you don't. All right? If I commanded you to believe on Santa Claus, and you say, well, I don't think I can really believe in Santa Claus. I'm sorry. I don't believe there's a Santa Claus. I'm going to condemn you for that? Why? No, it's not belief. It's commitment. All right? The old saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Well, Jesus, of course, knows that. So did the apostles. Nobody's trying to convince anyone against their will. They proved who they were. They weren't about credence. They were about commitment. And commitment is what saves, not credence. I'll leave it here. By the way, to the taggies, say hi to Grandma for me. Have a good night.